Samma samadhi, right concentration. And the Buddha says, practice concentration, develop it. One who develops concentration understands things as they really are. Normally when we hear that, we think of like vipassana. Oh, in vipassana, we're understanding things as what they really are. What does this mean? What does this mean that when you concentrate, you understand things as they really are? And we'll get into that. And so the Buddha also says, purification depends on concentration. The ending of the defilements depends on jhana. It's pretty, wow, so we understand how important concentration is. And so the Buddha says to use another Ganges simile, just as the Ganges river flows to the east, so one who practices jhana flows towards nibbana. So this is the importance of practicing jhana. And the reason why it is important is because concentration allows us to see more deeply than we ever could before. We can gain insight normally. We can gain insight actually outside of concentration. As a matter of fact, in the suttas, it's very rare, and the Buddha says it's very hard, but there are people who became awakened just by, without concentration, just by like the four satipatthana. But the Buddha doesn't recommend that. He says it's very, very hard. The Buddha always recommends, if you read the suttas over and over and over and over and over again, Buddha is talking jhana. He's talking concentration. Because this is how you see things, how they really are. And so how does this work? So the word samadhi is, again, one of those things that's translated in different ways. When you see the word concentration, most likely that's the most common translation of samadhi, concentration. Looked at through the roots and grammatically, you could understand it as collectedness, things that are coming together, a collectedness, or being collected. And others translate it as stillness. So there's a couple different ways that you can understand this. And the Buddha talks about not only just concentration, but noble right concentration. What is noble right concentration? If you come to a jhana retreat, you'll see, Bhante Ji will say, there is wrong jhana and there is right jhana. So there you can be trapped in wrong jhana. And so, but noble right concentration is jhana, is right concentration supported by all of the other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's here where these factors are coming together to support this concentration and allowing us to develop vipassana. Vipassana, now it's considered a technique, but really vipassana it means to see through, to see deeply, to understand deeply. And that's what concentration, deep concentration, allows us to do. More so than when we're not concentrated. So that is why we practice this concentration. And so, again, I'm going to go through the four jhanas, but I'm going to go through them very briefly. We don't have time to go through them in detail. You can come back in either June or July and attend the 7 days of jhana with Bhante Ji. But so the Buddha says, now what is right concentration? Here, secluded from sensual pleasures. That's the first thing. What are sensual pleasures? The 5 cords of sensual pleasures. So just for a brief time, you've cut the cords. You're not the puppet of the sensual pleasures at that point. A brief time, you've subdued and you've cut the cords. You are secluded from them. secluded from unwholesome states. That's the 5 hindrances. For a brief time, you've cut off the hindrances. You haven't done it permanently. That is when the hindrances are defilements, and we cut the defilements. That's the end. But this is a temporary suppression of sensual pleasures and the hindrances. So, a bhikkhu enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought and examination. This is vitakka and vichara, and you can understand vitakka as wholesome thoughts, wholesome intention. And indeed, you can understand jhana itself as a consolidation of wholesome mental states. You're not going to get into jhanas if you have your mind's full of ill will and anger and negativity. As a matter of fact, you can't. You can't force yourself into jhana. It actually comes when you set the groundwork. Setting the groundwork is working on sensual pleasures and the 5 hindrances. When you've worked on the groundwork enough where you're able to subdue those, jhana comes on its own. Concentration comes. And then this has rapture and happiness. That's piti and sukha, born of seclusion. So, for the first time in your life, your hindrances are gone. There's no cords attached to you. And it's so a happiness, a lightness. And you have this piti, this rapture, that is a pleasurable feelings from the mind. This is not pleasurable feeling that is understood from sensuality. This comes directly from the mind itself. And so, as you practice the first jhana, and you master it, and you start to actually seek for more refined concentration, and you naturally slip into the second jhana. And in the second jhana, it says, the subsiding of thought and examination. Here's our noble silence. Thought and examination are gone. Noble silence. They have subsided because they're very gross. They're very gross forms of mental activity. And we're moving towards ever finer forms of mental activity. He enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence. This is a confidence that you've been able to get to this far in the practice, and you've developed confidence like in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and your own ability to do this practice and these kind of things. So, and unification of mind. So when you see unification of mind, this is the strong concentration of mind on the object. So where your mind is unified on that object. Is without thought and examination, and has rapture and happiness born of concentration. So rapture and happiness are still there as you become more deeply concentrated. And so you practice this jhana, and you develop it, and you master it, and these factors begin to be very gross factors again. You're going towards more fine aspects of concentration. And so you go to the third jhana, with the fading away as well of rapture. Rapture is too gross. We're moving towards fine. He dwells equanimous and mindful, and clearly comprehending. He experiences happiness with the body. So this happiness, this contentment, this feeling that you're secluded and you have these less and less of a burden of gross mental activity is upon you. You're getting finer, deeper, more concentrated. So you still have this happiness, this sukha. He experiences happiness with the body. He enters and dwells in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, he is equanimous, mindful, one who dwells happily. And then the fourth jhana. Again, we're moving towards ever finer states. of mental concentration, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and displeasure. He enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, and includes the purification of mindfulness by equanimity. This is called right concentration. So at this fourth jhana, this is where you have this purification of mindfulness. At this fourth jhana, this is where you are able to really see and understand at the deepest, most concentrated levels. You understand what? Vipassana, seeing deeply, is understanding the three characteristics of existence. All conditioned things are impermanent, anicca. They're dukkha. They're unsatisfactory, suffering, however you want to translate it. And they're anatta. They're not self. That is vipassana. When you see those three characteristics in your experience, you develop wisdom. And so that is how concentration allows us to point our mind to see the nature of our minds and the nature of existence without any clutter. Pain, pleasure, it's all gone. Equanimity. A mind that is calm, stable, not brought here and there by likes and dislikes, pain and pleasure. And in that stillness, you can see, you can understand and see insight. So that is why concentration is so important, and why the Buddha speaks about concentration and practicing this, these methods in these earliest Buddhist texts, is because they allow us. We could do it the hard way, but the Buddha says this is the best way. Do this. Practice jhana. Over there is the root of trees. Over there, forest, an abandoned hut. Practice jhana. So, I want to end with one of my favorite quotes from the suttas. And it says, "Get up, sit up. What's your need for sleep? What rest is there for those afflicted by the arrow?" You can see that as the arrow of craving, the arrow of dukkha, all connected in that regard. So the next line is, "Get up, sit up. Train hard for peace. Do not let Mara know that you are heedless, deluded, and under his control." So train hard. But remember, be in tune with your practice. Find that tune. Find that the way you can do your practice so that you can practice these factors of the Noble Eightfold Path and eventually gain your freedom.